On a humid night in 1996, the phone inside the residence of Asia's richest man, Li Ka-shing, began to ring. On the other end was a voice neither trembling nor angry, a voice conducting business. That call would become one of the most extraordinary criminal moments in Hong Kong's modern history. This is L.J. Easton. Welcome to Eastern Shadows. Tonight we dive into the story of a man who reshaped Hong Kong's criminal identity. This is the rise and fall of Cheung Tze-keung, the big spender. In the collective memory of Hong Kong's 1990s, certain underworld figures became mythologized. Not because they were the most brutal, but because they were the most audacious. Cheung Tze-keung was one of them, a man who lived at the intersection of two worlds, the fading empire of colonial Hong Kong and the rising gravitational pull of mainland China. He was not a traditional triad boss. He was not loyal to a single organization. He derived power through scale, economic scale. To him, crime was an investment. Every operation needed a return on capital. He believed that a ransom of the right target could yield faster profits than any drug route or nightclub racket. In his mind, crime was not about territory. It was about efficiency. Born in 1955 to a poor family, Cheung grew up in an era of plastic factories and survival economics. For many young men in those streets, there were only two pathways to power: family connections or crime. Cheung had neither. He was charismatic, persuasive, and addicted to risk. Petty theft evolved into minor robberies and extortion. But unlike other street gangsters, he was not obsessed with control. He was obsessed with velocity, how fast money could move. In prison, he studied, not books, but systems. He watched how criminal economies worked, how intelligence sharing tightened, and how drug profits were shrinking. He realized the future of crime would not be about running illegal industries. It would be about extracting capital from legal elites. In 1991, Cheung executed a robbery so brazen that it still defines the phrase Hong Kong crime audacity. His crew stormed the tarmac of Kai Tak Airport, one of the busiest airports in the world, and robbed a truck carrying Rolex watches, a robbery on an active runway. Being the safest city in Asia that prided itself on order and efficiency, this was unthinkable. It was not just theft, it was symbolic warfare. The airport was a monument of colonial modernity, and Cheung had just walked into it with guns and walked out with luxury. That one job turned him from a local gangster into a legend. He had shown that a single crew with logistical precision could humiliate an entire system.
The police are very concerned to ensure that in dealing with violent crime, the interests of innocent passers-by are protected. But what the whole community expects of the police, in addition to that, is to take the firmest possible measures in dealing with those who commit crimes, regardless of the consequences for the same innocent passers-by.
To the public, he was no longer just a criminal. He was a myth who redefined what was possible. And for Cheung, the next logical target was not a bank or an armored car. It was a person, the Prince of Hong Kong, a living reservoir of capital. By the mid-1990s, Cheung Tze-keung had money, soldiers, and confidence. But he wanted something no other criminal had ever achieved: a direct transaction with the top of Hong Kong's power pyramid. That pyramid was crowned by Li Ka-shing, Asia's richest man and the King of Hong Kong.
Despite the diminutive frame, Li Ka-shing is, by any measure, one of the giants of the business world. A refugee in wartime Hong Kong, he went on to establish an empire that controls ports at both ends of the Panama Canal, produces oil in the United States, and operates telecommunications in the UK. Hailed as one of the greatest entrepreneurs in history.
Targeting his family was not merely a crime. It was a declaration Cheung planned it with the precision of a corporate takeover. He studied the Li family's daily patterns, driver routes, and communication channels. On the 23rd May, 1996, when he finally moved, the operation was swift, clinical, and almost silent. The son of Li Ka-shing, the Prince of Hong Kong, was taken on his way back from work. The victim, Victor Li Tsar-Koi, Li Ka-shing's eldest son. The ransom, 1.038 billion Hong Kong dollars, equals approximately 2.1 billion US dollar buying power in 2025, one of the largest ever paid in global history. But Cheung was not interested in cruelty. He treated Victor Li not as a hostage, but as an asset. He ensured safety, comfort, food, and calm conversation. Cheung walked in Li Ka-shing's living room by himself. The ransom negotiation was conducted like a board meeting. When the Li family delivered the cash, Cheung kept his word. Victor Li was released unharmed 48 hours after the kidnapping, and Cheung walked out Li Ka-shing's mansion with bags of cash, in and on his Lamborghini. To the underworld, this was genius. To the public, it was terror. And to the Li family, it was the moment they realized that even the most powerful were no longer untouchable. Cheung had pulled off the impossible, and in doing so, redefined the economics of crime. But he also made a fatal mistake. He started to believe in his own myth. After the Victor Li case, Cheung was eventually arrested for another kidnapping attempt. The evidence was strong, but Hong Kong's British-era courts were bound by strict procedural rules. When those chains of evidence broke, so did the prosecution's case. Cheung walked free. The police were furious. The public was stunned. The criminal world was inspired. Cheung interpreted this not as luck, but as proof that he was beyond capture. He believed that as long as he stayed within Hong Kong's borders, the system could never truly punish him. In reality, he had just exposed a flaw at the heart of colonial justice. A system built to protect fairness, not to eliminate threat. That flaw would soon be corrected, not by Hong Kong, but by Beijing. By the late 1990s, Cheung's legend had crossed every border: newspapers, films, dinner table whispers. But he made one final catastrophic decision. He moved his operations into mainland China. He thought the rules were the same and influence could be bought. But this time he was wrong. Mainland law did not view extreme crime as a procedural challenge. It viewed it as an existential threat to social order. And that meant one thing: elimination. Behind closed doors, Chinese authorities began a quiet, methodical hunt. They tracked his movements, his associates, his money trails. For them, this was not merely criminal investigation. It was political theater. Cheung had humiliated colonial law. Now he would become the stage on which sovereignty was demonstrated. When mainland officers finally caught him, the message was clear. This was not an arrest. It was an ending. Cheung Tze-keung was trialed not in Hong Kong, but in mainland court, and the verdict was swift. Death sentence. For Hong Kong, the news was a shockwave.
詳細嘅新聞內容：廣州市中級人民法院一審判決張子強犯罪集團，其中張子強同6名香港以及內地嘅被告被判處死刑或者係死緩，其餘29名嘅被告就分別被判處無期徒刑同埋有期徒刑。當局並且沒收咗合共11億1000幾萬嘅財產。
廣州市中級人民法院用咗大約2個鐘頭，宣判36名罪犯嘅判刑。案中主犯43歲嘅張子強，以組織、策劃、指揮非法買賣爆炸物罪被判死刑。走私武器彈藥罪同綁架罪被判無期徒刑，3罪並罰執行死刑，剝奪政治權利終生。當局並且沒收咗張子強人民幣6億6千幾萬嘅財產。
For Beijing, it was the point proven. Under Chinese sovereignty, there would be no loopholes, no glamour, no escape. However, people also heard that it's a favor Beijing did to Li Ka-shing, who expressed absolute support during the handover of Hong Kong in 1997. On 5th December 1998, the day Clinton and Lewinsky scandal broke out on the news in the U.S. While in Guangzhou, China, Cheung Tze-keung was executed by firing squad. The trial had been brief, the verdict final. For the Chinese court, this was not simply punishment. It was a message. Cheung had become a living symbol of everything Hong Kong's colonial system could not control. Audacity without consequence, wealth without limit, and arrogance without fear. Mainland China was determined to end that symbol once and for all. When the news broke across Hong Kong, the city paused. Some people were relieved. The nightmare was over. Some were impressed. Beijing had done what Hong Kong could not. And others were uneasy, because for the first time they saw that Hong Kong no longer defined justice's final line. Cheung Tze-keung's story is more than a chronicle of crime. It is a mirror reflecting the transition between two worlds. He was born under British law, he thrived within its loopholes, and he died under Chinese sovereignty. For Hong Kong historians, he remains the last great outlaw of the old city. For Beijing, he is proof of the power of state control. For filmmakers, he is legend. And for everyone else, he is the reminder that myth is only seductive until it meets the state. Thanks for watching. Be safe, and I'll see you next time.